Like a trusted turnout jacket you've had for years, Flex 7 outer shell fabric delivers a perfectly broken-in feel on the very first wear. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of enforced technology, Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit tencatafabrics.com/flex7. Flex 7, powered by enforced technology. Only from TenCate Protective Fabrics.
This episode of Fire Engineering Podcast is sponsored by LogRX, providing real-time accountability of all your narcotics from cradle to grave. Coming soon, LogRX will also track medical supplies, equipment, PPE, and even vehicle checks. Learn a better way to track your narcotics at logrx.com. That's LOGRX.com.
Fire Service Data and Tech Talk. Hey everyone, it's Eddie Buchanan with the Fire Service Data and Tech Talk on Fire Engineering. This month we're in July, so just coming up. Hope everybody had a good 4th of July holiday. And a couple of announcements coming up very, very soon in August is FRI, so Fire Rescue International, the International Association of Fire Chiefs Conference. And there's an event there that people that listen to this show should know about. It's called Fire Dog. So it's Fire Data Analyst Working Group, right? So it's a kind of an informal group of people that work in the data field. Some of them are civilian analysts. Some are, the people that are data scientists. You have some people there that are uniform guys who, had the unfortunate occurrence to be on light duty and got assigned to data work. All of that sort of folks are there in that room. And it's free, right? It's on Tuesday, August 13th. It's going to start at 8 o'clock in the morning at the Convention Center there in Dallas. So if you're within driving distance, or maybe you can talk to Chief and an airplane ticket or something, but come on out. It's limited to 125 people. So it's free, but there is a cap, right? So if you just Google Fire Dog and IFC, you'll be able to find their webpage and see where to register and stuff. So I've been there to several different ones. Ever since they've started it, I've been attending that, and it's a very useful program. So if you're interested in data, technology, community risk reduction, any of those things, this is certainly an event you want to attend. So that is August 13th it's a Tuesday at FRI. So make sure you catch that. And this month's topic is on community risk reduction. And I had the honor of attending the Community Risk Reduction Conference this spring out in Arizona, and it was really eye-opening. I just went to attend, to sit in classes, learn as much as I can about community risk reduction, because as it relates to data, because we're still kind of getting our arms around what that is and how to use it. And it was kind of a funny story. I was sitting there talking to Greg Rogers, who was with the Fire Life Safety section. And I had some ideas of who the right people were to talk about community risk reduction, but I asked Greg too. And I said, sniff around and talk to the folks that are here at the conference and tell me who is the kind of the go-to fire department when it comes to community risk reduction. And I had my ideas and he had his. And when we compared notes at breakfast one morning, we had the same people. So I knew I was on the right path. And it happens to be my guest today, my friends, Chief Chuck Ryan. Chief, welcome to the show. And Chief Mike Carsten, who's the assistant chief there. And I'm trying to think, where are we? We're in Tucson, Arizona. And I got a comment on the chief's office. When you look at his office, that's the coolest fire chief's office I've ever been in. So welcome to the show. And we'll start with you, Chief Ryan. Just give us a little bit about, who you are, where you're from. Tell us about the department and make a little introduction.
Sure. Thanks, Eddie. Thanks for having us on. So I'm Chuck Ryan. I'm the fire chief for the city of Tucson and the Tucson Fire Department. I've been here in Tucson since September of 2019. Prior to that, I worked for just shy of 26 years with Fairfax County, Virginia Fire and Rescue Department. Retired from there as an assistant chief to take the job here in Tucson. So I've been in the fire service, started in 1991 as a volunteer EMT firefighter with Fairfax County, and then got onto the career side in January of 94. So just a few months ago, celebrated my 30th anniversary as a career firefighter. Have a background in law. This is a second career for me, so to speak. So have a law degree, EFO, CFO, all that jazz. But really, like you were talking about and we're going to talk about today. Really passionate about community risk reduction because, quite candidly, that's where any fire department does the best work for the community.
Awesome. Thank you for being here, and a Virginia native. Good to see you, my friend.
Chief, I'll share a little. You asked a little bit about our department.
Yeah. Tell us about it.
Super quick. So we are one of 3 metro-sized departments here in the state of Arizona. Phoenix Fire is the largest department in the state. Then us here in Tucson, and then the Mesa Fire Department is also one of the metros here in the state of Arizona. But we have 645 sworn personnel working out of 22 stations across the city. Super busy, over 104,000 calls every year, and growing. And it's an interesting community here in the desert Southwest. A lot of urban challenges, not dissimilar from what you see in some major metro areas in the Northeast and the Midwest as well. So we just happen to be in some pretty beautiful surroundings. Dedicated staff of about 70 civilian personnel that keep us running every day. But I'm super honored to be the fire chief here and keep carrying the banner for Tucson Fire.
Awesome. It's a beautiful place. Well, how far are you off the border? A couple hours or?
58 miles.
58 miles
to the closest border point. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been through visiting a couple times, and I noticed, like, man, we were really, really close to the border down there. And then you have a lot of pretty significant technology industry there in the community, right? Yeah,
we do. This is it's very heavily military. Davis-Monthan Air Force Base is based here. Basically, it's becoming the home of a good portion of the Air Force's Special Operations Command, Combat Search and Rescue. We do a lot of work actually with the PJs, the pararescue jumpers for the Air Force. Most of them, a fair number anyway, are assigned here at DM, and they actually get some sets and reps on our medic trucks so they can stay current on their skills when they're not deployed otherwise. Also, Honeywell is a big employer here, certainly the University of Arizona, and Raytheon Missiles and Defense. We have a place that builds nuclear missiles here, so it's a little layer of complexity.
All kinds of going on. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Chief Carsten, tell us about your background. I think you're born and bred there, right?
Actually not. I grew up in Toledo, Ohio.
Well, then I was completely wrong.
Well, I used to visit here like when I was on school break, but had some family out here. And after high school, I moved out to Tucson and was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life, and got on with a small county fire department, spent about 8 years there. And in 1998, got on with the Tucson Fire Department, and just celebrated my 32nd year in the fire service. It's been an amazing journey, and this community risk reduction topic is something that's very near and dear to my heart, and I'm passionate about it. And I think it's where we can really move the needle in the fire service. And thanks so much for having us on today.
No, absolutely. And I looked at your background. I didn't go past the 90s. That's why I go as far as I scrolled back. I went, okay, he's been there a long time. So that's fantastic. Thank you guys so much for doing this. I think, from a firefighter perspective, what the heck is community risk reduction? For folks that are operational, like how would you define it? Like, what exactly are we talking about? Because one of the things in the fire service, is it prevention? Is it the fire marshal's office? Did they rename something? Is it something new? What does community risk reduction mean for you guys there in Tucson?
So from the fire chief's perspective, Eddie, to me, it's as simple as preventing the 911 call. To the extent we can kind of quietly put ourselves out of business to some degree, that's good. That's good for the community, and it's good for our folks, because in a busy urban environment, the more calls we can shed off the system by building community resiliency, the better that is for our men and women. The less burnout, the less struggle, all that. So really, when I talk about it in the stations to the folks, because we come out, whether it's the Recruit Academy that we're going to graduate next Thursday here, or whether the Recruit Academy I graduated from back in Fairfax in June of 1994, you come out of there with one mindset only, and it's about running calls, right? That's the firefighter's mindset, and that's awesome. But we can never lose sight of the fact, I think, and I preach this to our folks, about the oath you took and the words you spoke during your interviews about being of service to others, protecting your community, protecting the most vulnerable people in the community, all those things, right? So it's not just about running up and down the road on big red or big white or whatever your color fire trucks are, wherever anybody's watching this. It's about being a public servant to your community, and whatever that means, right? If it's hanging smoke alarms, that's one piece of it, right? If it's you're in an elderly person's home and they're having trip and fall issues, and you see they've got throw rugs down, either helping them with sticky tape to get them down, or talk to a caregiver to get those rugs out of the way. We could go for hours and hours about all the layers of what community risk reduction looks like. But at its root, to me, it's about driving down the number of calls that come into the system by building up community resilience.
Chief Carsten, what's your take on it? How do you define it?
So I think it's really a strategic, integrated approach to solving those risks that we talk about in the firehouse. You think about the coffee table talk that occurs in every firehouse across America, and you hear the men and women talking about a lot of those calls that are on their mind, those buildings that are scary and dangerous, some of those calls that present, a high level of risk. And, what can we do collaboratively, not only within the confines of your fire department, but seeking partnerships outside the fire department to solve some of these problems. And it really comes down to going from a reactive type of mindset to a proactive mindset. I think there's a lot of value in that thought process. Many times you see, crews, they're in the station waiting for the 911 call. The call comes in, the doors come up, they respond, mitigate that emergency, come back, and they're waiting for the next one. That's a very reactive type of mindset. And what we're pushing here in Tucson is more of a proactive mindset, really allowing the crews to be empowered to take ownership of their own local risks and start solving some of those problems to get some of those calls off their plate. And, if you follow the process, I think a lot of that's very achievable.
I'll throw on my budget hat, right? One of the things that I think has been a profound observation, not that I've had, but I've heard other people speak about, that I agree with, is I don't know that there's any more funding to be had for significant growth in emergency services, right? We're already competing with law enforcement. We're competing with other functions of government. It's not like we're going to have some windfall of money that's going to allow us to continue down a response path, right? So if that's the case, the only place we can really try to ease the burden on the firefighters is to get a left the bang, as I like to say, and try to prevent some of these incidents from occurring, particularly the ones that aren't necessarily real emergencies, things that are more, service-oriented calls. That really seems to be the focus. And I hear firefighters, one of the ways they articulate busy is how many they run after midnight, right? That's kind of how you get a sense of how busy you are. And if we could take some of those calls that weren't really emergencies off the plate for that after midnight call, I think that's the answer to getting firefighters involved, right? Like, if you can go during the day and visit with Ms. Smith and maybe do some things to help her or him so that they, maybe they don't call you at 3 a.m, like that would be a more impactful use of time, I think. So, I see it from a firefighter's perspective that it's in your best interest. It's not like we don't have plenty of calls to go to in most municipal areas. If we can do some things to reduce that volume, I think that's a strong stance to take. And then we have to talk about, about how do we measure that performance and some of those data related things. But if I could take my 5 after midnight and make it 2, that sure would be nice, right?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
And I think you share that message in the firehouse, Eddie, and when you start educating the men and women riding on Big Red, if you will, about how they can do that, then they want to take some ownership in that, and they'll start taking some proactive steps to try to take some of those calls off after midnight. And we've seen that here in Tucson, and it's been successful, but it almost requires somewhat of a cultural change, a mindset change to move in that direction, which goes back to my comment about that proactive mindset.
Well, what have you guys done? Has this influenced your training process? How do you indoctrinate new firefighters and incumbents to try to facilitate a kind of a different way of looking at it?
So just this morning, matter of fact, I was out talking to our recruits who graduate next Thursday about community risk reduction. And we were talking to them about the importance of understanding the importance of identifying the risk within your first due response area. I said, all of you are going to be assigned to different firehouses on different shifts. And all those firehouses inherently have a different risk profile. And when you start digging into that with your captain and your crews and understanding those risks that you may be responding to, and then trying to figure out ways to collaborate and figure out ways to reduce that risk and that risk profile, that comes down to firefighter safety and community safety at the end of the day. And what we always want, right, is our folks to arrive at work, have a great productive day, and go home safe to their families. And taking those types of proactive steps can really help in that process, if you will. So having that conversation today at the recruit level is very, very important. We've also integrated that in our promotional processes, and all of our promotional processes have a series of classes that, as an example, our captains will go through to prepare them to ride the right seat of a fire truck or a ladder company. And we've integrated community risk reduction in those series of classes as well, all the way up to our chief officer certification. And I think we're starting to have some conversations about, do we integrate that in the true promotional process? Is there value in that? And I believe there probably is. So I think it's a conversation that you got to continue to have, whether it's your first day on the job or you're a tenured member of the organization. Community risk reduction needs to be one of those terms that isn't just used haphazardly, but it's kind of in our daily vocabulary here around the organization.
So let me see if I can articulate this. You guys tell me if I'm right. So the difference between the fire marshal's office and the old fire prevention concept or mentality and community risk reduction is it involves everyone. Where in the fire prevention world, like inspections were typically done, you had dedicated inspectors, or you had people that were assigned to that. Didn't really affect the operations companies for the most part, to a large extent, maybe for pre-plans, but not really inspections. Community risk reduction involves everyone in the organization. It's across the whole board. So anybody who has what I'll call customer contact, interaction with the citizens, has the opportunity to participate in a community risk reduction program of some sort. Is that an accurate way to kind of? I want to make it clear for firefighters, like, this is what that was, and this is what this is today, and they're not the same thing.
Yeah, 100%. One of the things that I've done here is, and I tell everybody this, that whether you're sworn staff or professional staff, we're all community risk reduction technicians to some degree, from me on through the person who sits downstairs in our reception area and greets the public when they come into the lobby. So every time you have any of us, like you said, that customer contact, you have an opportunity to improve somebody's life in some small fashion. That's community risk reduction, right? A lot of people, I think, get wrapped around the axle thinking it has to be these major programs and major pieces of work, bodies of work, and they can be, and in some instances they need to be, but man, sometimes it's the smallest stuff that can have the biggest impact, right? Like you said, if you can have 2 after midnight instead of 5 after midnight, I'm all in for that as a firefighter. And if I can invest 2 hours of daylight into 4 or 5 hours of sleep, I'm in. It's the WIFM, right? What's in it for me?
Yeah.
And give everyone the why this is important, right? And the fire service has morphed, right? Because it used to be called community risk reduction. Used to at one point be, like you said, housed in fire prevention, strictly the work of prevention personnel, and then it became public education, pub ed, right? And it's now we're talking life safety education, because pub ed was what? Schools, 3rd grade, and puppet shows and all that, which is all good and important stuff, but that's such a small segment of impact in the community, or ways you can potentially impact your community. So it doesn't necessarily have to cost a lot, and it doesn't have to take a huge amount of time and investment. The little things can make a big, big difference.
Absolutely. So what kind of does this require any kind of like partnerships? Are you guys working with other whether it be functions of government or maybe some community nonprofits that are woven into this thing? How is that set up there?
Yes to both. I'm going to take part of this, and then I'm going to let Mike talk about one of our premier programs. Again, from the fire chief seat, having this conversation, not just within the fire department, but when I go over to City Hall and the city manager has the city executive leadership team meetings every 2 weeks, that's when all the city department heads are together. And there may be but one or two departments, like core service type stuff, internal service like HR, IT, and even they play a role in it. But having those conversations with the police chief, the parks director, the streets, transportation and roads, all those people have something to offer, right? And again, it's if you can articulate the win to them by engaging in a little bit of CRR work to either ease workload on their staff or to maybe transfer workload to put the right work in the right hands kind of thing. Once you get people in that conversation, that sort of whole of government approach to it, it really has a lot of good synergy in it. And candidly, in a perfect world, community risk reduction should not really reside within the fire department. It should reside within your city leadership, whether it's the city manager, the mayor. I mean, in order for it to be effective in the utopian sense, that's where it should be at that higher level. But for now, we'll run it out of here and be the champions for it. But engaging, at least as the fire chief, my fellow directors and getting their buy-in to it as well. Mike, you want to talk about TC3?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chief. So, Eddie, one program that came out of the CRR process here at Tucson Fire is our TC3 program. It's really, quite frankly, become a nationwide model for some departments. So it's Tucson Collaborative Community Care. And what that program does, it takes our high 911 utilizers and works to get them out of the 911 system connected to wraparound services that they really need and require. For so long, our only solution was to send everybody to the emergency room, right? Regardless if they really needed that type of medical care or not. And through this program, talking about partnerships, we've collaborated with well over 100 different partners in the Tucson area, Pima County, just to try to mitigate and get these people connected to the resources that are going to help them and pull them out of that 911 system, which now we're talking about taking those 5 after midnight down to 2 after midnight. And it's turned out to be such a successful program. And we do this in partnership with a local nonprofit hospital, the Tucson Medical Center. They have team members here at our fire headquarters building that work collaboratively with Tucson fire members. And the way that program works is if I'm an engine company captain and I've gone to Mrs. Smith, several times over the course of a tour, and we're not really able to provide her what she needs, and the emergency room isn't the answer, as a captain, I can send a referral to the Tucson or to the TC3 team. They will then follow up with that client and do an intake and start talking about medical history. What medications are you on? Are you currently connected with any type of social services or other wraparound services? And they start connecting the dots with all these different partnerships that we've created. And we've had many, many success stories where some of these people who were really down on their luck, struggling in life, have came and gave testimonials in some of our meetings about how they're thriving now in the community and doing better than ever because of this program. So I like to call it our flagship program that came out of the community risk reduction process, and it's something that we're really proud of.
Yeah, and I want one other thing, and I'm not going to belabor this too much, Eddie, but it's not just the people too, right? And I'm super proud of this part of our TC3 program. It's pets, because we see a lot of people who, elderly or socially disadvantaged, houseless, and they have pets, and they're reluctant. A lot of NGOs that run shelters, or they're sort of medium and even high barrier shelters, they won't allow pets. And so some of these people, their choice is, hey, I'd rather live in a less than optimal condition if it means I get to keep my companion animal, right? So we have partnered with it's PetSmart, I believe, right, Mike?
Yes.
Gave us an awesome grant for pet food, veterinary care, spay neuter services, so that if somebody needs to go somewhere, we don't take care of their pets here, but we have the ability to get them directed to the right place and then reconnect them with their pets later. And that sometimes is the incentive folks need. So it's one of the CRR is so broad, and little things like that. An awesome grant opens up doors for people to go and get help, and then in turn be more resilient and less reliant on the 911 system.
That's an amazing program. And you hit on something that's, again, the old budget guy. I'm like, hey, there's funding there, right? Like we're very used to the AFG safer funding streams, but when you step outside of that from a community risk reduction perspective, it opens up a whole new opportunity to find funds. I would assume, like, if PetSmart's given a grant, who else? Like, what other opportunities might there be that you could leverage some of these resources? Are you seeing other opportunities? PetSmart's a great example. Is there anything else that comes to mind?
100%. So the key is to get out of the firehouse, as I say, right? Get out of the silos, get into the communities, because you never know. I tell this to our recruits. I tell it to the folks in the stations. You never know who you're encountering. You never know who you're meeting in the store, who this person is, or what their background is. Tucson, despite all of its urban challenges, is a very philanthropic community, and there are folks here with money that they want to donate to worthy causes. And so Mike has heard me say this. My senior staff is like, they're probably tired of hearing me say this. Never leave money on the table. If you can show the benefit to the benefactors, the potential benefactors of how our mission aligns with their philanthropic causes, then it's a win-win. And so we have our TC3 program has vehicles that are they're in the city fleet because we maintain them, fuel them, and so much, but we didn't have to buy them. They were donated to us. Durable medical supplies get donated to us all the time, motorized wheelchairs, and just it's a plethora of stuff. And so, like you said, it's the grant, the federal grant system is under attack every year in the budget process, right? We have to go tooth and nail with our congressional delegations to try to get their support and make sure the funding doesn't get cut or doesn't get cut dramatically. But I think all too often people overlook opportunity that's right in their backyard because they don't know about it. So by getting out in the community, talking to people, as the fire chief, I've said, you got to go to a lot of bad potluck lunches and neighborhood picnics and stuff like that and be visible, because that's what makes you accessible and gets, in a town, especially a city where word of mouth travels fast, boy, if the fire department's out there doing proactive stuff, people will come your way and try to find ways to help. At least that's been my experience as the fire chief here.
One thing I'll add, Eddie, on the partnership piece of the TC3 program, on a quarterly basis, we invite all our partners to come down here to Fire Central, and it's about a 2-hour meeting, and they talk about the different clients that we're serving and helping. And I'll never forget the very first meeting that we had. What we realized by the end of that 2-hour meeting, that a lot of these partners were competing or working on the same efforts or the same client, and they weren't working together, and they didn't realize that they weren't stepping in the same direction. And once we started creating those relationships, collaborating, communicating, and getting to know one another, our success stories increased, exponentially. And I just can't stress the importance of having those types of relationships and partnerships. And now everyone knows one another by first name. We're working together. We can pick up the phone to solve problems. And it's just been a blessing for these clients that have came out of the TC3 program and are now thriving.
Yeah, and don't also discount fire chiefs, your labor partners, right? Here, our IFF Local 479, Tucson Firefighters Association, they're all in on this. They're full in. And labor can do things that you can't as a fire chief, right? There's things they can ask for, advocate for, flat out lobby for, that usually by gift rules or otherwise, a fire chief cannot do that. So, really getting your labor partner standing with you in this effort is critical.
I was just sitting here thinking, before I retired a couple of years ago, there was a push from our local government. They used the term safe communities. And, it was part of their branding, and it was a big initiative. At the time, we didn't really we were like, okay, it sounds like good marketing, I guess, but we didn't really think much of it. And my hunch is that probably came from either an ICMA or a NACO conference. That'd be my guess, right? They probably went to a conference, they heard about this thing, and they came back and tried to do something with it. But it sounds like this is a great opportunity. If you've heard that, if you've heard your local government use that term or something like it, this is a perfect chance for you to run in there with that with community risk reduction efforts and take advantage of that. Because I think what your government leaders are calling safe communities, we could easily take advantage, but capitalize on that, enhance our efforts under the community risk reduction banner, like with a program like you just described. With, that's an amazing example of what a safe community could be. I'm sitting here thinking, I bet there was a conference somewhere, because, that's probably how those things go. Let's talk. I'm a data show, right? So I got to ask, like, how are you measuring the success of your efforts that you're doing in community risk reduction? What are the like data elements, and how do you do that? How do you capture that?
Mike, you want to go with that one?
Yeah. So, here at the Tucson Fire Department, we're pretty fortunate to have a deputy chief over our IT technology and accreditation division, which falls under the CRR Bureau, and also a data analyst who just do incredible work every day, really digging into the data and making sure that we're looking at quality data in terms of the information we're seeking to identify and hopefully mitigate some of these risks. So, some of the common things that we're digging into is our Enforce data. Also, heat maps are a great visual tool, especially for our crews to really understand where those high response areas are and where to focus their efforts. We've used some survey tools like Survey 123 for some different data sets, and then even some local, probably publicly accessible, data from the Weather Service, census tract information, those types of things. So we try not to leave really any stone unturned in terms of digging into the data. And I think from a CRR perspective, like one of my favorite things to do is talk to the men and women in the field. And we did this back in 2015 and asked them 7 pointed questions. We visited every station on every shift to ask them, what are the types of calls that you're going to most often? Out of those calls, which pose the highest risks? What would you do if you could mitigate those risks? So there were some questions that were asked, and then we published a document called Voices from the Field, and we distributed that throughout the entire fire department and went over to City Hall. So our political leaders understood some of the things that we were facing and the concerns of the men and women in the field. And then out of that came some station-based projects. So that important first step was talking to the men and women about the risks in terms of how they perceived them. But then we had to peel back that onion and start digging into the data to see if, in fact, what they were telling us was true. And a lot of it was, supported by good data. It's good data in, good data out. And I think we're very fortunate now to have somebody from our data analyst position who is a genius in that area. And we can pretty much ask him for anything on any day, and you're going to have it like in your office on your desk in 5 to 10 minutes. And I think having somebody that has that background and that knowledge is so important for a fire department, particularly a fire chief, right? When Chief Ryan needs to go talk to his boss, the city manager, and political leaders, and is able to really support his message with quality data, that's important.
So you're measuring things like contacts and citizen contacts. I'm curious, like how are you? Do you use or have the ability to identify like target zones, things like maybe certain risk areas or certain parts of the community that maybe like you mentioned heat maps. Like give me an example of how you're using a heat map to kind of tell you where to focus your effort.
So one of the first types of calls that we focused on from a heat map perspective, there was a period of time we were having a high incidence of mobile home fires on the south side of Tucson. There was a couple communities down there where we were seeing a bunch of fires. So we wanted to start pulling the data to see, in fact, if that was true. And when we pulled the heat map on the southwest area of Tucson, you could see where it was dark red in this concentrated area. So that provided an opportunity for not only the crews that responded to those areas, but also our public educators and our community risk reduction team to start going out and educating them on fire safety, the importance of having working smoke alarms, even for the crews that are responding to do some pre-planning. Are you prepared to respond to that area? Because oftentimes in mobile home parks, it's not uncommon to find one water source at the front entrance, and that might be your only one. So are you prepared from an operational perspective to lay 1,200 feet of hose to the back of the park? So again, it was that collaboration that started occurring based on the information that we were getting that was evident and displayed on those heat maps. We've also done it for Narcan overdoses, heat-related emergencies, just to name a few.
Okay, awesome. That I think that's an important piece. That it's a recurring theme I see on this show a lot. Is there's the myth that firefighters are reluctant to collect data, and I call it a myth because they're reluctant to collect dumb data. Things that are this busy work that they're reluctant to do that. Heck, I am too. But if we are collecting data that it has operational value, like things like when I come back here for a structure fire at 3 a.m, that I have some information on that location or that park or whatever. That's data I'm going to use. I don't mind collecting that data, right? That's why I think it just depends on who you ask about firefighters' attitude towards data. But I think when there's usefulness in it, I don't think they have any aversion to it at all. I agree. Go ahead, Chief. What are you seeing?
I agree with you 100%. And I think it's to some degree, I think it's generational, right? Because there are some perhaps older, more veteran firefighters who come from a generation where data was used to some degree against the fire service, right? But now newer firefighters, they're tech savvy by and large, and they're the digital natives, so to speak. And if I, as a fire chief, can explain to them why we need to capture good data and how they can help me do it, and so that it's not difficult, and make it in a way that it's not difficult for them to capture that data and enter it in the right place, in the right field, and know that it's going somewhere for a reason, that's the win. And then they'll be all in. It's combating that, the data shows that, Station 4, pick a place, only ran 100 calls last year. So in budget cutting, we're going to close that station and remove, allocate the apparatus elsewhere. That's a whole generation of firefighters dealt with that kind of data. And I think that's where some data aversion comes in. I also, personally, I don't like the term data driven. I like to say I'm data informed, data inspired, because data tells a lot of the story, but not necessarily the whole story. And when you're dealing with city managers and others, even though they're our bosses, right? They use data very differently. ICMA, NACO, they use the data in a different way than we do, and giving my boss the why, any fire chief giving their boss the why, and being able to defend your data to the point where it's better than theirs, or whatever source they're getting it from, helps you win the day, really.
Absolutely. And they're like, I was talking about their conferences. I looked at that a while back to see what information they were getting related to the fire service. There was one fire department class. It was kind of a data related class, and that guy didn't have a whole lot to do with the fire service, right? So we're not there telling our story like we should be, probably. So that's a topic for another day. But yeah, so what you mentioned Survey 123 sounds like Esri platform stuff. But what tools are the primary components of your system? Survey 123. What anything else that's an important part of it?
I think those are probably the main different sources or tools that we're really using on a day-to-day basis, and those are the ones that our data analyst and our deputy chief of IT technology are really digging into day in and day out.
Awesome. And I always tell folks with a lot of fire departments, if you don't know if you have access to the Esri platform or not, you can always reach out to them. Their director of public, fire and EMS is Mike Cox is his name, good buddy of mine. We actually talked about playing golf today, but we didn't get to do it. But anyway, Mike can look up pretty quick and see if you have access. And then also what I will do a lot of times is I'll just go Google the fire department or go Google that local government and look at their GIS system, just, whatever city GIS. And I can tell pretty quick looking at their down at the bottom, if you'll see what kind of mapping they have. And that'll give you a good hint, right? Like maybe you have access to those platforms. You just may not realize you do. And you can go poke around in the local government and find out how. So I think it's important that we keep people pushing towards that direction to get access to those tools.
Absolutely.
What advice would you have for if there's somebody listening to this show, firefighter, lieutenant, captain level, maybe, that their executives, their leaders in their fire service seem to be asleep on this? Like, that's not something that the fire department has made a priority yet. How would you go at it from, trying to work up from like the boot level up to maybe middle management? What advice do you have?
I would say find a way to give your boss the win, right? Because it shouldn't be about you taking credit for it. It's about the organization getting credit for it. So a station officer or a firefighter in a place where, again, like Mike was saying, every station, every municipality, every fire district, however your department is organized in the geographic area you serve, station by station, the risks are likely different. There may be some commonalities, but largely they're going to be different. And so if you want to make a difference in your station area, your first due, as it were, then make a project of it, and don't ask for money to do it, or ask for a little bit of money, but make a project of it. Don't make a big deal about it until the project is complete, because as with data, outcomes are awesome. The outputs are awesome, but outcomes are what matter, right? So if you can show through some sort of research and a little bit of legwork that your efforts have reduced harm in some way, whether it's a reduction in call volume, reduction in a certain type of call, property saved dollars are up, whatever it may be, and communicate that upward, then that boss, your fire chief, or the more executive level chief officers can take that forward if they're thinking wisely to their leadership and say, hey, look at this win. We got this. We're making a difference in the community, because I'll tell you, that resonates with the elected officials. I mentioned this when speaking at the CRR Leadership Conference. We bang on our elected officials a lot, but they've got a lot. They also have a lot to manage, right? They're not just paying attention to the fire department. They're not just paying attention to the police department. And candidly, most places, the public is not complaining to them about the service of the fire department, right? They're hearing about, roads are a disaster, trash isn't getting picked up, whatever. Very few people have bad things to say about their fire department. So we need to get in front of them with positive stories. And by doing so, I think a fire chief worth his or her salt is going to realize the value in that especially to their longevity in position, to be honest, and make it kind of makes it become a priority for them if it's not in their DNA to start with. So if you give your boss the win and they're smart enough to carry it forward and see the value in the win, then you've done your part.
I think what I would add, Eddie, to that is, there's a lot of tremendous opportunities to educate, right? Whether that's the frontline firefighter, the captain, the battalion chief, all the way up the chain of command. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to go to a lot of conferences that are specific to community risk reduction. And I would say over the last couple of years, I'm seeing more executive level chiefs and fire chiefs at these conferences getting educated. And many of them are key presenters at these conferences. So we're seeing more fire chiefs who understand the holistic importance. They see it from the 30,000 foot view, and they're championing community risk reduction. And I think that's what the fire service needs. And to my opinion is, in order for a fire department to be successful, whoever's sitting in that fire chief's office has to understand community risk reduction, support it, and push the message down to all levels. So, there's buy-in, if you will. And, to Chief Ryan's credit, since day one, he's been a champion of community risk reduction. And, he, at one point, the Tucson Fire Department had our community risk reduction division in fire prevention in the very early stages back in 2015 and 2016. And Chief Ryan moved it out of there and, moved it up into its own bureau, if you will. And it's paid dividends, but it's very refreshing to see many more senior level chiefs, executive level chiefs at these conferences getting educated on the importance of community risk reduction. And just that now that brings back positive energy to their department, where now they're going to start empowering the men and women to do those station-based projects and start mitigating those risks. So I think those are tremendous opportunities that we can't lose sight of, as just those educational opportunities that are out there.
It does seem to I've noticed the same thing. It's picking up a lot of steam on the national level as far as people, the awareness, people being able to articulate what it is now with some clarity. That we're making great strides. You hit on something, Chief Ryan, that I've heard. It's another kind of theme, is that one of the best things you can do if you're looking to get promoted, whatever position it might be, is to pick up a project like that. Is to go find some way you could contribute to your department that is maybe not in the normal pathway, right? Like something that's a new program, a new service, a new way to take care of people, whether it be internal or external, and develop that program so that it's a polished, finished outcome. And I think, because when you are looking to differentiate yourself as an upcoming leader in the organization, you can, when people say, well, tell me why we should pick you, you can give a tangible example of, I'm a self-starter. I have the vision. I have the ability to complete the work and, do the heavy lift and bring it to a successful conclusion. I think anytime you can find a way to do that, whether that be in the world of data and analytics or in the world of community risk reduction, there's so much opportunity there, because there's not a lot been done yet. We're still kind of in a very much a growing phase of data and analytics, and still very much in the growing phase of community risk reduction. So I like to say lots of grass to mow in those fields, right? Like you can get out there and do a lot of good work. So I think that's a important point to make. Where do you guys, I'm curious, Tucson's out on the tip of the spear, right? As far as leading the way in community risk reduction. So where do you go for guidance, resources? Like, what documents are important to you? What are there any associations or groups that folks interested in this path should be aware of and participate in?
First off, I think the IAFC's Fire and Life Safety section is certainly has thought leaders in that group that help chart this. Um, again, it's to some degree community dependent, but there are organizations in every state, in every territory, that are looking for greater opportunity to serve in the community, right? To do good for the community. So it's not so much about membership in organizations or groups as much as it is the just general networking and getting, like I said, getting out of the firehouse, getting out of headquarters, and going and talking to community leaders, meeting people where they are, hearing what their needs are, not impressing your own internal implicit biases on what their needs are, and then in turn bringing that back and acting on them to the extent you can. Probably not exactly the answer you're looking for, but that's at least my approach to it, right? Is really getting out and talking to the community, getting to know people and meet them where they are, and figure out what do they need from the fire department? How can we help them over and above simply you call for 911 for an ambulance or a fire truck and we show up? That's very noble and tremendous work. But what else can we do? Where's the value added, right? Because they expect the 911 response. They don't expect us to, help repair somebody's leaky roof or tack down throw rugs or build a ramp, make a veterans home wheelchair accessible. They just don't expect that we would do that or come back and mow somebody's yard, whatever. But that's really the key, right? And so I don't think there's a one size fits all answer to that. It's really knowing your community and being engaged, being honestly and truthfully engaged in putting in the work in your own community.
Mike, do you have any go-tos in your back pocket that are resources that you lean on?
I mean, I totally agree with what Chief Ryan stated. I mean, getting out in the community is key. And what we found is people naturally are drawn to the fire department, right? They want to get involved. They want to help with smoke alarm installation events, or, how can I help, a veteran or someone in need that needs some work done on their home. So a lot of those things, oftentimes go unnoticed in terms of how the fire department's perceived that, they don't do that kind of stuff. And, those are stories that we like to promote here in the Tucson Fire Department when that type of work's being done. And it's just very rewarding to know that people in the community naturally want to just come to the fire department and lend a hand and help us out. And it all goes back to the partnerships and the collaborations. Chief Ryan mentioned the Fire and Life Safety section of the International, and that's a group I've been involved with for a handful of years. And there's a lot of very, very smart men and women that are working within that section of the International, doing a lot of great work. And I kind of feel like we're on the cutting edge of a lot of the key things that we're seeing. Lithium ion batteries, as an example, there's a lot of good work coming out of there. I would say that's probably my go-to, for a lot of the community risk reduction stuff that's occurred in the fire service. And from that the division's perspective of the International, we're trying to get out there as much as we can to educate the fire service on those risks and what is community risk reduction and how can you integrate it, from a holistic approach in your fire department, and just trying to change the mindset. And there's a lot of great work being done there, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
Yeah, I would echo that. The fire life safety section, community risk reduction is a big chunk of it, but they do so much more than just that. Like there's a lot going on related to the various threats and hazards from residential sprinklers to building
Absolutely.
codes to the whole thing. So, and admittedly, as an operations and then an administrative guy, didn't really pay a lot of attention to it until later. It got in once I started going to these events and things. I was like, wow, there's a lot of work going on that firefighters really need to appreciate. That they may create situations where you don't have a risk, or a close call, or some awful multi-casualty event happened because it was prevented through their work. So I think that's a huge piece. How about the NFPA 1300? That's a That's the standard on community risk assessment and community risk reduction plan development.
So
that published recently, right? To 2020.
Yeah, 2020. So when that was being developed, the NFPA reached out to a handful of fire departments that wanted to get involved in that project early on, and that was something that Tucson Fire Department got involved with. I think that's a great resource for fire departments out there that are looking, for something to assist them on their CRR journey. There's a lot of extremely valuable information in there that will really be beneficial, as you go down that path of community risk reduction. So I'm a huge advocate for, I think NFPA 1300 is outstanding, and there was a lot of great work to get it done and published.
And, it's always good to reference the standard, right? So when you're applying for grants or whether it be federal grants or in the community, local community grants, it's always nice to reference back to that standard. It always carries a lot of weight. And then there's the Community Risk Reduction Conference, right? That's in the, I guess it's in the spring. Is that the right timing for that?
Yeah, that's fair. It's typically, we just had it last month, so May is our typical year we've been having that, and I think we're in our 4th or 5th year. It originally started in Reno. That was where our first conference was, and that was a huge success. Most recently up in Glendale, that was one of the best attended conferences we had in terms of total personnel. And I think a lot of people walked away with a real different perspective on community risk reduction. And I think one thing I want to point out about that conference is, it's titled as, the International Association of Fire Chiefs Community Risk Reduction Leadership Conference. And when people see that, oftentimes they think, oh, that conference is only for chief officers. Well, I think what I would like to share, that is not really the case. It's for all levels of the fire service. Whether you're a new firefighter or a captain, we're looking for all of those different ranks and tenures to come to this conference, because there's something that we can learn from each other, right? And one of the best, networking opportunities is certainly sitting around at the lunch table or after the evening entertainment that's going on to talk about CRR and just to talk about what's going on at a neighboring fire department or within another state. What kind of programs are coming out of your CRR process, and I certainly don't mind borrowing ideas from other fire departments and sharing ours. So I would encourage folks that if they're looking to get educated and get to know people in the CRR circles, the Community Risk Reduction Leadership Conference is just one of several great conferences out there.
Yeah, most of the presentations I saw were from practitioners, not necessarily chiefs. There were chiefs there, but most of the lectures and presentations were people hands-on. So definitely, if that's something that if you've listened to this show this long, then you probably want to put in a request to attend that show or go in your own dime if you have to, to catch it next year. So I'm trying to think. I think where is it next year? I think I know that. Do we know? Do y'all know yet?
It hasn't formally been announced yet, Eddie, but
okay.
It's coming soon, so stay tuned.
All right, so keep watching the website, and that will be announced shortly. So yes, make sure you attend that. So you've got the NFPA 1300 as a resource. You've got the IFC Fire Life Safety section, and you've got at least that one conference, if not more, that you can go and get access to resources and really get you on a good path down the community risk reduction lane. Any closing? Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Eddie. Just another conference that I'll throw props to is Fire Rescue International, which I think you referenced earlier. Mm-hmm. There are several CRR tracks, programs, classes that are offered there as well. So that's another great conference for folks to attend if they're looking to learn a little bit more about community risk reduction. And
we're starting to see it at FDIC as well. The topics are broadening out. FDIC is known for its tactics and operations, and training. But I've also noticed that starting to show up there. Heck, I did a data workshop at FDIC, so that's new, right? I don't think we've done that before. So we're starting to see an evolution there in that content as well. So I appreciate you guys being on the show today. Any parting thoughts or where can people learn more about the programs you're doing there at Tucson.
Hey, Eddie, thanks for having us. It's an honor. It's always good to see you again and talk this kind of stuff. My final thoughts are, is from the fire chief's perspective, fire chiefs have to be the champion for this within their departments, within their municipalities, their districts, whatever the geographic makeup is of the area you serve. But one thing fire chiefs forget too is that ISO rating, there are points available for the quality of your fire prevention, life safety education programs, which are part of CRR. Again, with my mantra of never leaving money on the table, I don't like to leave points on the table either when it comes to ISO ratings. And you don't have to be a class 1 ISO department like we are to maximize those points. So there's the guidelines are there if you talk to Verisk and the ISO folks. But like I said, just be the champion, chief. Lead from the front and be visible in your community and be visible to your folks to show them that you value their work in the area of community risk reduction as much as you value their hard work in the areas of fire suppression and EMS.
Chief Carsten, anything to leave with the group?
Yeah, thanks, Eddie, again for having us. This has been a tremendous honor. I think one thing I'd like to just remind people of is, as a fire department, right, we have that responsibility to respond to emergencies and risk, but we also have a tremendous responsibility to reduce the occurrence of those events in the first place. And through an integrated strategic approach of community risk reduction, we can in fact do that. And don't think that you just got to do it within the confines of your fire department. Step outside of the fire department to seek, collaborative partnerships. And there's a lot of other entities out there that can help you solve some of those problems. And I think you'll get a lot more forward momentum when you start integrating partnerships into your CRR efforts.
Absolutely. We are here for them, as they say. And what better way than is to prevent, So Chief Chuck Ryan, Chief Mike Carsten with Tucson Fire, thank you so much for sharing your story and what you're doing. Great work there. It's amazing. I encourage everybody to go check out, get more details about what they're doing and attend some of these events and use these resources we've talked about on the show. So that is a wrap for this episode of the Fire Service Data and Tech Talk on Fire Engineering. You can find us as usual on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, Fire Service Data and Tech Talk. We're on Twitter at Data Tech Talk is the handle there. And of course, you can always shoot me a message on LinkedIn, just under Eddie Buchanan. We'd love to hear your ideas for the show and get any feedback that you might have. So I hope everybody enjoyed this episode. We'll see you next month, and be safe.
Fire Service Data and Tech Talk.
Like a trusted turnout jacket you've had for years, Flex 7 outer shell fabric delivers a perfectly broken-in feel on the very first wear. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of Enforce technology, Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit tencatafabrics.com/flex7. Flex 7, powered by Enforce technology, only from TenCate Protective Fabrics.
This episode of Fire Engineering Podcast is sponsored by LogRX, providing real-time accountability of all your narcotics from cradle to grave. Coming soon, LogRX will also track medical supplies, equipment, PPE, and even vehicle checks. Learn a better way to track your narcotics at logrx.com. That's LOGRX.com.